Our reading this morning is from the book of Jonah, a minor prophet of the Old Testament, from the latter half of the story. So Jonah set out and went to Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly large city, a 3 days' walk across. Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's walk, and he cried out, 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. And the people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast, and everyone, great and small, put on sackcloth. When God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil ways, God changed his mind about the calamity that he had said he would bring upon them, and he did not do it. But this was displeasing to Jonah, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, is this not what I said while I was still in my own country? That is why I fled to Tarshish at the beginning, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, and ready to relent from punishing. And now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." Every year, I find myself in the distinctly odd position of reminding people that even for those who celebrate Christmas, Happy Holidays is a more accurate greeting than Merry Christmas. Now, this is not just to acknowledge that there are other faiths and other sacred days around this time, or to gratify those who claim no faith. But rather, Christianity itself has about 15 holy days within about a month of Christmas. Christmas is just the only feast day most of us know the name of. So I had a huge array of options when choosing what I would speak about today. I could have spoken about the feast of St. Stephen, made famous in the song Good King Wenceslas. I could have talked about the Feast of the Holy Name. I could have acknowledged Epiphany and talked about the Magi and the star. But in truth, there was only one date on my calendar this holiday season that truly stood out for me. Only one celebration that I have been anticipating for months, marking off days like a child looking forward to Christmas. And finally, that date has come, because this very weekend, Netflix is releasing the 3rd season of Cobra Kai. Yes, you heard me correctly. I'm talking about Cobra Kai, the Netflix original television series. Cobra Kai is a continuation of the Karate Kid movies that were released through the 1980s. The original Karate Kid movie introduces us to Daniel LaRusso, a scrawny underdog new kid played by cute little Ralph Macchio. Unfortunately, Daniel runs afoul of the most infamous of 80s villains, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed rich kid bully. In this case, his name is Johnny Lawrence. It seems like every movie released in that time had a Johnny Lawrence, and in many cases they were played by the same actor, Billy Zabka. But no one could sneer and jeer at the powerless better than Johnny Lawrence. See, Johnny is the star of his karate dojo, Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is known for their dedication to cruelty and mercilessness. And so, Daniel takes up karate himself in order to fight for all that is good and pure in this world, ultimately taking down the bully in the All-Valley tournament in the climax of the film. Now, I'm not going to lie. This is a pretty exciting moment in the film, especially for a child watching back in the 1980s like I was. I'm sure everyone around my age practiced the crane kick in the playground. In the Karate Kid world, things were pretty black and white. Daniel was good, and Johnny was bad. It almost couldn't be more straightforward. That is, until you watch Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai first debuted in 2018, 34 years after the events of The Karate Kid. It is from the black and white good versus evil world of Karate Kid that Cobra Kai rises, and rises above. Because this time, we are following the story of a down-and-out Johnny Lawrence. We meet a Johnny who has fallen hard from his hard-partying, high-living ways. He has been cut off by his rich, uncaring stepfather, and he has a son he barely knows. Johnny, we quickly learn, is a man who finds himself in the ironic position of now being the underdog himself. And worse, he's a man who knows that in his younger days, he hurt people badly. We see on Johnny's face that he lives with the shame of that knowledge every day. And as we learn more and more of his story, the audience begins to understand that the world of Karate Kid isn't as black and white as it first appeared. We see in flashbacks that Johnny was emotionally abused as a child by his stepfather. And then, when he seeks out another father figure, he is even more badly used by his karate sensei, John Kreese. Kreese is the embodiment of the Cobra Kai philosophy, ridiculing and even beating Johnny when he shows any weakness. In a shocking and brutal scene that underscores just how young Johnny was in that original movie, we see Kreese choking him and insisting, "There is no fear in this dojo." But Johnny never allows his past to excuse his behavior, even if it does explain how he became the person he has become. And so when he sees a scrawny young teen who is new to the neighborhood being bullied, Johnny finds himself making the choice he wishes he had made years earlier, stepping up for the underdog. Pulling from years-old muscle memory and pulling a leg muscle as well, Johnny jumps in to defend the boy. And with that, the redemption of Johnny Lawrence has begun. Delighted to find he still has his karate skills, a new idea dawns for Johnny. He opens a karate dojo and chooses the name Cobra Kai. After all, it's what he learned as a youth. But even from the start, Johnny is uncomfortable with the hard-edged and cruel philosophy of Cobra Kai. He knows better than anyone the person you become when you live by the 3 tenets of Cobra Kai, which are strike first, strike hard, no mercy. This unholy trinity of ideas continually conflicts with the person Johnny wants to become. We see him learn hard-won lessons. And while he sometimes stumbles as he learns a new way to live, he never once goes backward. Still, when Johnny learns that a friend is dying, he calls on his old sensei, John Kreese, to keep lessons going while he's away. Johnny sternly instructs Kreese to learn new ways of teaching rather than reverting to his old lessons. But Johnny fears that while he is away, Kreese will be up to his old tricks. I have 2 clips to show you from this small subplot in the series. In the first clip, Johnny speaks to his old friend Tommy, who you may recognize as one of the other Cobra Kais from the first movie. As Johnny is speaking to Tommy, he comes to the realization that his love for his students means he finally has to stand up to Kreese. And indeed, when Johnny returns from this trip, he learns that Kreese was, in fact, teaching his kids to be ruthless and vicious, to become, in short, the kind of person that Johnny was in high school. Seeing the harm that Kreese has done to his students, having the encouragement and support of his friends, and finally truly understanding the harm that was done to him, Johnny finds the strength to ask Kreese, the man who was both his mentor and his abuser, to leave. Thus, in the second clip you'll see, we see Johnny facing his students after asking Kreese to leave. Now, throughout this series, we see Johnny grow so much as a person. But I'm going to warn you, he's still a little rough around the edges. There might be some language used here you're not used to hearing in church. But let's take a look.
You still got one thing that's more important than anything, Johnny.
What's that?
Time. You still have time.
Yeah. Time for what?
Meet someone new. Change your life. Do what you want to do.
I don't know. Right now, all I want to do is make sure my students don't make the same mistakes that we did. I don't want them to look back at their life full of regret.
You'll do it, Johnny. You're the champ.
Today we'll be learning one of the most important lessons a Cobra Kai could ever know.
Where's Sensei Kreese?
Yeah, shouldn't we wait for the Sensei Emeritus before we get going? Or not?
Mr. Kreese will no longer be joining us. I made a promise when I became your sensei to always look out for your best interests. Despite how hard this may be for all of us, he didn't have our best interests at heart. John Kreese may have founded Cobra Kai, but he no longer represents what this dojo stands for. His Cobra Kai was old and outdated. He refused to move forward. And what happens when we do that, Mr. Diaz?
You get stuck like cement.
Exactly. To be a great fighter, you gotta learn to adapt. His creed on the wall. Follow it to the letter. It'll make you strong. It'll make you formidable. It will also make you an asshole. Because that's just black paint on a white wall. But life's not black and white. More often than not, it's gray. And it's in those gray areas where Johnny Lawrence's Cobra Kai sometimes shows mercy. Doesn't mean you can't be badass, it's still a requirement. But you have to learn to think not just with your gut or your fists. To really use this. Which leads me to today's lesson. Head, buddy. Grab a partner.
Now, it's okay if you laughed at the end there. You might not have been able to tell from my description of the show so far, but it is in fact a comedy. I should also probably warn you that there's a whole lot of time dedicated to the teen dramas of all the students, and that no one is any sort of saint when it comes to language or martial arts style violence, or drinking, especially Coors Beer, who, incidentally, clearly sponsor this masterpiece of a redemption story. Yet in all this, I find myself in tears again and again as I watch Johnny Lawrence go from the most unredeemable villain of my childhood to a man who does the work of becoming a better person day after day after day. And so naturally, I thought of the story of Jonah. I bet you thought I'd forgotten about that this whole thing started with a reading from a minor prophet in the Old Testament. However, like the story of the Karate Kid, I learned the story of Jonah when I was a young child. Most of us probably did. Jonah quite famously refuses to go to the evil city of Nineveh when God has told him to go. Jonah finds himself swallowed by a giant fish, or whale, depending on the storyteller. While in the fish's belly, Jonah realizes that he probably should have obeyed God. He prays for forgiveness. Upon being released from the fish, and the less you think about that process, probably better, Jonah does what he should have done in the first place. He heads to Nineveh and tells the people there about God. And the people listen and stop being evil. Yay! What a clear-cut, black and white, easy to understand story for children. No wonder we all learned this Bible story as children, right? That is, of course, until you learn what happens next. Now, unlike Cobra Kai, we didn't have to wait 34 years to hear the next chapter. The very next day, Jonah isn't happy to learn that the people of Nineveh turned to God and changed their ways. In fact, Jonah is angry that God shows mercy upon people. He even uses that as his accusation against God. Ugh, I knew you'd show mercy on these people. I knew it. That's why I didn't want to come. I wanted them to be punished for all the wicked deeds they did. That's what they deserve. They don't deserve mercy. Jonah, it would seem, ascribes to the old philosophy of Cobra Kai. Strike first, he shouts at God. Strike hard, no mercy. I'd always thought of Jonah as the hero of this story. He goes to this evil town, tells them to repent, and they do. He wins. But when it comes to redemption and mercy, there just is no black and white. As Johnny Lawrence taught us, it is in the gray that we find mercy. And when God is involved, that mercy often seems undeserved and even outright irrational. Jonah made promises to be good, to obey God and go to Nineveh. But his heart wasn't changed. He made a short-term promise to be a better man and gave it up the minute things didn't go his way. In reading the whole story, we learn that the story of Jonah isn't a child's tale about obeying God. It's a morality tale about making surface changes and empty promises to God instead of deeply regretting the harm you have caused and putting in the work to become a better person. The people of Nineveh, on the other hand, have much in common with the modern-day morality tale that is Cobra Kai. Nineveh was known as a supremely evil city, so bad that they seemed unredeemable. As bad, even, as Johnny Lawrence, supreme 1980s bully. And yet, in the end of the story, it is Nineveh who made a real commitment to change. Nineveh, like Johnny Lawrence, puts in the real work that is needed to make a change. The New Year is not one of those 15 Christian holidays that I mentioned earlier, but the way we celebrate it in our culture, it could be. Our faith celebrates redemption. We believe in change and that grace is offered to everyone. So this year, as you think through resolutions for the new year, consider committing to a deeper change. I urge you to search your heart for any harm you may have done to others. I implore you to honestly face the forces that made you who you are and see explanations but not excuses. Ask yourself, who needs mercy and grace and love from me? And most of all, I ask you to remember the lessons of Minor Prophets and Cobra Kai and put in the real work it takes to be the first to step up for the powerless, to love with a furious intensity, and to have irrational mercy on others. In other words, love first, love hard, show mercy. Amen.